Rain drummed against the glass walls of the luxury dealership, masking the storm brewing inside. Eleanor clutched her swollen belly as the man she loved, billionaire tech mogul Victor Kane, snapped like a serpent. His hand, heavy with diamond rings, struck her cheek with a crack that silenced the showroom. Gasps froze in the air, but none dared move. No one crossed Victor Kane. No one, except a man standing by the service desk, his jaw like carved granite, eyes blazing like a storm. The name on his badge read, Ethan Cross. To Victor, just another manager. To Eleanor, her cousin, her protector. The hum of wealth clung to Victor Kane like an expensive cullen, intoxicating and suffocating in equal measure. Money was his language, and power his weapon. He strode through the dealership like a king inspecting his fleet of chariots, signing deals with a flick of his pen that could erase a man's future or crown another's dreams. Today was supposed to be perfect. A new limited edition hypercar, hand-delivered, the jewel in his billion-dollar empire. Eleanor had smiled when he invited her along. She always smiled. That was what Victor loved about her, the perfect smile, the perfect posture, the perfect wife. But lately, that smile trembled. He noticed. Oh, he noticed everything. The whispers when she thought he wasn't listening. The way her hand lingered over her phone, hiding messages. She was hiding something, and Victor Kane didn't tolerate secrets. The dealership gleamed under white LED lights, chrome cars shining like predators under glass. Eleanor trailed behind him, her soft steps swallowed by the marble floor. Her fingers curled protectively around the gentle swell of her stomach, almost instinctively. She hadn't told him yet. God, she hadn't found the courage. Every time she tried, his eyes, the cold steel eyes that once made her heart race, cut through her voice like razors. Victor, maybe we can. Not now, Ellie. His words were soft, almost loving, but laced with that quiet warning tone. The one that always made her shrink inside her skin. Salespeople hovered like moths to flame, smiling too hard, laughing too loud, desperate to please the billionaire who could make or break them with a single Yelp review. Eleanor caught their glances, some curious, some pitying, but no one spoke. And then she saw him. At the far end, near the service bay, a man in a dark polo leaned against the counter, his arms crossed over a chest that looked forged from war itself. He wasn't staring at Victor like the others. No, his gaze was on her, sharp, searching for a heartbeat. Her breath caught. That jawline, those eyes. It had been years, but blood recognizes blood. Ethan. The name whispered in her mind before her lips dared form it. Her cousin. The one who left for the army when they were barely out of high school, disappearing into battlefields while she disappeared into Victor's golden cage. She almost smiled, until Victor turned, saw her staring, and his temper, a volcano dressed in harmony, erupted. "What the hell are you looking at?" His voice cracked like a whip. She flinched, words fumbling in her throat. "You embarrassed me, Ellie. You always find a way." Before she could speak, before anyone could blink, his hand shot out. The slap was thunder in the sterile showroom. Eleanor staggered, her hand flying to her cheek. And in that frozen second, silence screamed louder than the storm outside. The sound of the slap lingered, sharp and merciless, echoing through the marble cavern like a gunshot. The salesman froze mid-smile, mid-breath, their forced cheer dissolving into horror. A woman near the reception desk gasped, but no one moved. No one ever moved when Victor Kane struck. Not his staff, not his partners, not the vultures that fed on his wealth. His money was a leash, and fear was the collar. Eleanor didn't cry. She couldn't. Tears were a weakness Victor devoured like candy, and she'd learned long ago that silence was the only shield she had left. Her cheek burned like fire, and somewhere inside her belly, a small life shifted as if sensing the storm outside. Her child. The secret that lived between her ribs like a prayer. She cradled it instinctively, a trembling hand over the curve that Victor still hadn't noticed. Victor's voice slithered through the silence, smooth and venomous. "You think you can embarrass me in public? Staring at some grease monkey like that? What, is that your type now?" He spat the words as if her very existence offended him. The grease monkey stood motionless by the counter, but inside something primal detonated. Ethan Cross had seen war. He'd seen men tear each other apart for scraps of land, seen bombs shred villages to dust. But nothing made his blood boil like this. A pregnant woman, a wife, his cousin, slapped across the face by a man who wore power like armor. He stepped forward. The sound was almost nothing, a single heel tapping against tile. But it carried weight, an invisible tremor that made even the salesman glance up. Ethan's movements were unhurried, deliberate, the kind of controlled grace that only came from years of combat training. His badge caught the light manager, service department, but that wasn't who he was.
"Not really. The Ranger never left the man, sir,"
Ethan said, his tone calm, almost cautious, like a soldier approaching an unarmed civilian. But his eyes, they were steel, locked on Victor with lethal precision. "You need to step away from her." Victor turned, a slow, incredulous swivel of the head, as if someone had just told the king his crown was crooked. For a second, silence swallowed the room whole. Then Victor laughed, a low, contemptuous chuckle that blurred arrogance. "Who the hell are you?" Ethan didn't flinch. "The guy telling you this ends now." The billionaire smirked, slick and poisonous.
"Do you know who I am?"
"Yes." Ethan took another step, closing the gap like a predator circling its prey. "And I don't give a damn." Something in Ethan's voice, a calm so absolute it bordered on terrifying, made the laughter die in Victor's throat. For the first time, the titan of tech felt the faint, unfamiliar sting of fear, but pride was a cruel master, and Victor Kane was its most loyal slave. "You think you can talk to me like that? You work for me." Victor hissed, his voice a blade. "I own this place. I could have you crawling on the street by sunset." Ethan's jaw flexed, a silent tick of rage barely caged. "You touch her again," he said, voice low, lethal, "and you won't see sunset." Victor's lips curled into a snarl, but something flickered in his eyes. He searched Ethan's face and found no bluff, no doubt, only the cold, unyielding truth of a man who had stared death in the eyes and learned not to blink. For the first time in years, Victor hesitated. And in that hesitation, Eleanor breathed for the first time all day. But the storm was only beginning. The rain outside hammered the glass like 1,000 fists, but inside the dealership, the silence was so sharp it could cut steel. The salesmen huddled behind glossy desks, their eyes darting between the two men as if watching a fuse burn down to an unseen bomb. No one spoke. No one even breathed too loud. Victor Kane, the man who'd bullied boardrooms into submission and bent politicians like wet clay, squared his shoulders. He was used to winning. Winning was in his blood. But now, staring into Ethan's eyes, he felt something that tasted bitter and foreign, the edge of fear. And fear, for men like Victor, always curdled into rage. "You think and threaten me." Victor's voice cracked like a whip, loud enough to make Eleanor flinch. "Do you have any idea what that costs? Men like you're nothing. You fight other men's wars for scraps while Ethan stepped closer. Just a breath, just enough for Victor to feel the gravity of him. "While you what?" Ethan said softly, his voice a steel cable pulled tight. "Slap around women who can't fight back. That what makes you a man?" Victor's jaw tightened. "She's my wife." "No," Ethan said, his tone flat and final. "She's family." For a fraction of a second, the words didn't register. Then they landed, heavy as a sledgehammer. Victor's smirk faltered. His gaze flicked to Eleanor, who stood frozen, one hand cradling her cheek, the other her belly. Her lips trembled, but she didn't deny it. Couldn't. "Family." Victor spat, his voice jagged with disbelief. "You're related to this low-life." Eleanor opened her mouth, but nothing came. The fear was a fist around her throat. Ethan didn't wait for her. "Her cousin," he said, eyes never leaving Victor's. "Ethan Cross, former Army Ranger. I've seen men like you before, mouth full of money, heart full of rot, and I've broken every one of them." The air shifted electric, as if the dealership itself braced for impact. Victor sneered, but there was a tremor beneath it now. "You think you scare me? You're just a washed-up soldier playing mechanic. I could bury you in lawsuits before you even." The punch came faster than the thought. Ethan's fist, a hammer forged by years of war, drove into Victor's jaw with a sickening crack. The billionaire's head snapped sideways, his body spinning into a display stand that exploded in a rain of brochures and chrome emblems. Gasps ripped through the room like gunfire. Eleanor screamed, not in fear, but in something raw and unnameable. Victor staggered, clutching his jaw, eyes blazing with animal fury. "You're dead." he hissed, blood bright against his teeth. "You hear me? Dead?" He lunged, wild and clumsy, his rage blinding him. Ethan moved like water, sidestepping the charge, grabbing Victor's arm and twisting it behind his back with surgical precision. The billionaire roared, but it was useless. Ethan's grip was iron, his stance unshakable. "I could end you right now," Ethan murmured in Victor's ear, voice a death sentence whispered under fluorescent lights. "But I'm not going to. Because she's watching, and she deserves better than your corpse on this floor." Victor writhed, but the truth in Ethan's voice sucked the fight out of him. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan released him. Victor stumbled forward, clutching his arm, his perfect suit wrinkled, his perfect image shattered like glass. "This isn't over," Victor spat, backing away, his pride bleeding harder than his lip. "You're finished. Both of you." His eyes cut to Eleanor, cold and venomous. "You think he can protect you. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ethan stepped between them, a wall of muscle and fury. "You're right," he said softly, dangerously. "She doesn't, but I do." Victor's glare lingered, but something broke in his stare, a flicker of fear he couldn't hide. With a final snarl, he turned and stormed toward the glass doors, his entourage scrambling to follow. The storm swallowed him, his black car vanishing into the rain. The silence that followed was suffocating. Eleanor's knees buckled, and Ethan caught her before she hit the ground. For the first time since she married Victor Kane, she felt safe. But safety was a fragile thing, and Ethan knew the war was only beginning. The dealership peed, like a punctured lung, leaving only the echo of the storm outside and the ragged sound of Eleanor's breathing. Her cheek throbbed where Victor's hand had branded it, but the ache was nothing compared to the hollow dread gnawing at her chest. She clung to Ethan, her body trembling as he guided her to a chair tucked in the shadow of the showroom. For a moment, neither spoke. Ethan crouched in front of her, his hands firm but gentle on her shoulders, scanning her face for injuries. Years of battlefield triage had etched reflex into his bones, but this was different. This wasn't a wound he could stitch shut.
"Ellie,"
he said, his voice low and steady, like an anchor in the chaos. "Look at me. Are you hurt anywhere else?" She shook her head, but her lips trembled. And then, as if the storm inside finally cracked the dam, tears spilled down her face, hot and silent. She covered her mouth to keep from sobbing out loud, her whole body curling in on itself. Ethan pulled her close, holding her like something fragile and priceless. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into his chest. "I didn't want you to see this." "You don't apologize to me," Ethan said, his jaw hard, eyes burning with a fury he kept leashed only for her sake. "You didn't do this." "He did." She swallowed hard, her fingers knotting in his shirt, and then the truth fell from her lips, so soft it almost drowned in the rain. "I'm pregnant." The word struck him like a bullet. For a second, Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe. His gaze dropped to her stomach, to the life she shielded with her trembling hands. Something in him shifted, anger sharpening into something darker, heavier. "Does he know?" She shook her head. "I couldn't tell him. I was scared." Ethan's teeth clenched so hard it hurt. He'd seen cruelty, seen tyrants in uniforms and kings without crowns, but this, his own blood beaten, carrying life inside her while chained to a man who thought love was possession. It hollowed him out and filled him with fire. A flash of headlights sliced through the glass. A black car idled at the curb, engine snarling like a beast in the rain. And then, as if conjured by hate, Victor Kane emerged from the storm, flanked by two hulking men in dark coats. His lip was split, his suit soaked, but his eyes burned with a rage that made the night itself recoil. "Ellie," Victor called, voice jagged with fury, echoing off the showroom walls. "We're going home." Ethan rose, slow and deliberate, every line of his body a warning. "The hell you are." Victor's men moved first, stepping forward like wolves. Ethan shoved Eleanor behind him, his mind flicking into a state he thought he'd left on foreign soil. Calm, calculated, deadly. The first man lunged, a fist aimed at Ethan's jaw. Ethan caught it midair, twisting the wrist until bone ground against bone, then slammed an elbow into the man's throat. He dropped, choking. The second came fast, a flash of steel glinting in his hand. A knife. Ethan sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm, wrenching it back until the blade clattered to the floor. then drove a knee into his gut. He crumpled, gasping for air. It was over in seconds. Both men writhed on the ground, and Ethan turned to Victor, who hadn't moved, his face pale beneath the rage. "You lay a finger on her," Ethan said, voice low and lethal, "and I swear I'll put you in the ground. Money won't save you. Power won't save you. Nothing will." Victor's eyes darted to Eleanor, then back to Ethan. For the first time he looked small. Not a king, not a god, just a man stripped of armor. Rain streaked down the glass behind him like bars. "This isn't over," Victor hissed. But his voice cracked. He backed away, retreating to his car. The doors slammed, tires screamed against wet pavement, and the black car vanished into the storm. Ethan stood there, chest heaving, rain hammering the windows like war drums. Eleanor stepped forward, her hand sliding into his, trembling but strong. For the first time in years, she didn't feel trapped. She didn't feel owned. She felt free. Because someone had chosen to fight for her when she couldn't fight for herself. And as Ethan looked at her, at the life growing inside her, he made a silent vow, a promise forged in blood and storm. Victor Kane would never touch her again. Outside, thunder rolled like distant artillery. The war wasn't over. But tonight, Ethan had won the first battle.